Jesus walks up to him and just asks him, do you want to get well? But see, this man was so consumed with this idea of the pool, and the whole story behind the pool, so we have to kind of take an ancient mindset of it, because our 21st century mindset is like, what, you just want to get a bath? Like, what's the big deal with him getting in the water? Well, there's an old legend behind it. So the ancients believed in a lot of superstitions. Pretty much anything they believed would have a spirit in it, and especially water. Water in the ancient times was seen as dangerous, and most of the time the ancients would offer some sort of sacrifice when going across water in warring places. But this pool in general had its superstition around it. They said that an angel would sometimes come down and breeze past the water and cause it to bubble. And the first person to get in that water would be healed of any ailment they had. And that was the legend at the time. But some people believed in these, but some only believed it was only temporary. That even just for a week they could be healed of their ailment. They would take it. So what we know today, though, the pool was like this place you can stand up about waist deep in, but underneath it had an underground spring to it. And sometimes the spring would bubble up and cause that disturbance in the water. So this is where that superstition came from. It was an underground spring. But all these people seemed to believe in it because there were crowds of people who were sick and needed hope to find a way to get through their ailment. And Jesus asked one of them, do you want to get well? That's a loaded question, honestly. Because some of us are probably thinking, of course that guy wants to get well. He's been sitting there for 38 years, right? Not being able to walk, seeing life pass him by, missing out on the goodness of life. But think about it. If you were sitting there for 38 years, not having any hope, would you believe somebody who came up and just asked you, do you want to get well? This guy could have been discouraged out of his mind, like, man, I'm never going to get into this water. I'm never going to get well. I will never be able to walk. Or sometimes people in this state of mind, they're too comfortable in this, and they're like scared at a point to where they don't want to go into life. They're not accustomed. You know, sometimes people who have been lost in the woods, I've heard these stories, it's tough for them to re-establish themselves in a normal society because they've been out of it for so long. And it's very hard for them to adjust, and sometimes they never do. They never get used to it. This guy could have been like that. There are some people who just can't take it, and they shut down. But we see here, when Jesus asks this question, his response is something that is faith, but in the wrong thing. Yes, Jesus said, I need help getting into this water. This water is what's going to save me. This is what's going to make me well. I'm going to get well if somebody could just help me into it. You know, what are some false hopes that we can put our faith
into? The lotto.
The lotto. Sure, some people buying some Powerball tickets.
Yeah.
Our job.
Our job, yes. You got to pay bills somehow, right?
Yeah.
A
I
doctor.
was just going to say, in general, money's going to make me happy.
Yeah, money.
Doctor.
The doctor. Sometimes.
Too much faith.
I don't like going to the doctor sometimes, but amen.
Relationships.
Relationships, yes. We can put a lot of faith into different relationships. Anything else that we can think of in our mind?
Kind of your own understanding of things.
Our own understanding. Our own logic, yeah. We can think we know what's best. But see, these things are false hopes. I hate to break it to you guys, but all these things are great. I mean, we need money to survive. We need a job to pay bills. We need to go to the doctor to be well. Don't worry, Angeles. I'm talking you up now. But we need all these things, but yet we can sometimes put our hope too much into them. And then we question when they fail us why we're feeling so down upon ourselves. These things are false hopes, and they will do nothing for us. You know, like I said, this pool would sometimes offer temporary relief. That was the story behind it, that some people would get well for a week. And notice, it's only for a little bit. You know, these things in our life, money, jobs, relationships, they can fill holes maybe for a little bit. Then after a while, it just doesn't work out anymore. That friendship you had, that friend hurt you somehow. That job that you thought was so great, you just got laid off. That doctor you were so confident in just told you you have a tremendous disease. And they can do nothing to help you. These are hopes that we put our faith into. And when they fail us, we're crushed. And we're left, just like this guy, laying down by the water for 38 years with no hope. And Jesus is asking him, do you want to get well? You know, and we see that this man was healed by God. Jesus here just said, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Now, the man had faith in the pool, but think about it. This man could have looked up at Jesus and go, you're crazy. Why would I try to stand up? I have legs that won't work. But the man had faith in Jesus for that second. And I think that's something we can admire about this guy. That when faced with Jesus, he put his faith into him right away and didn't question. Because my personal opinion, if he questioned Jesus, he probably wouldn't have walked. Because he had to get up in order to walk. But the thing about the healing, though, is it does show more about God's character. What are some things that you can see about Jesus in this from the healing? What are some things?
He's a giver.
He's a giver, for sure. Mike?
I think it shows how much he understands how to reach us. Because, you know, sometimes you see people going through things and you don't really know how to help them. Or you don't know what really is their problem. But when Jesus doesn't have that problem, you know, he sees you there sitting down, he knows exactly what you need.
Right? For sure. Jesus knows what we need. I like that. Josh?
I think just seeing how patient he is, because there's times where I try to give advice to people and I feel that I know that I'm correct and I'm right and they don't take it well the first time. And I'm just done after that. You don't get it, like you're just never going to get it. So after asking the man, do you want to be well, knowing his intent, like, oh yeah, if you get me into that water, I'll be okay. Him not getting it at first, still that patience to still continue the conversation, like let me read your thought process to where it needs to be. So you actually do have faith in me rather than this body of water. And you know that I'm the one that can help you.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Jesus is patient. Melissa?
I feel like Jesus gave without expecting anything in return. He just hoped for the best, but he didn't expect anything.
I like that. Mona?
Compassion and mercy. His compassion and mercy for him just sitting there and wanting to change his life and just asking if he wanted to change.
For sure. Take a couple more. I'll take it.
I'm just thinking how he, you know, this man's been there, like you said, for 38 years. He's been lying by the well, and it's obvious he wants to get well, so he asks a pretty straightforward question like, you know, the guy could have said, yeah, duh, yeah, I want to get well, it's fine here. But I think he's trying to get the man to acknowledge that you need help. You're going to get well, you can't do this on your own. It's obvious that you've failed for 38 years. But I just think he asked the direct question and makes no bones about it, of what this guy needed for him to acknowledge, I need help.
Sure, I'll take one more. Alex?
You know, basically, he looks past for excuses or mistakes or feelings of plans, and he still helps us, regardless of himself. This man, he was just making an excuse as to why, you know, he couldn't make it into the pool. And Jesus kind of just looked past that and still stepped in and was to help him out.
Sure. You know, all these things are for sure true. The thing about the miracles in the Bible is that it shows God's true character. can see a lot from God by reading the miracles. You know, because around this time, you had a lot of people who claimed to do miracles, right? That they can do all these miraculous things. But the thing about them, in difference to Jesus, was that Jesus did nothing for himself. No time in the scriptures will Jesus perform a miracle himself. He always was doing things for the good of others and not to gain things. Like most people in that time, if they healed this guy, they would be like, all right, here's the bill. What are you going to give me now? Look what I did. Look at the fame I have now. Look at this. And even we see after this healing, Jesus slipped away. He was nowhere to be seen after this. We're going to read that just a little bit here. We're going to go ahead and read in John 10 here, but Jesus' character, John 5, verse 10. But Jesus' character is just so evident through the healings of this. We're going to continue reading here. Verse 10, it says, "And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, 'It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat.' But he replied, 'The man who made me well said to me, pick up your mat and walk.' So they asked him, 'Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?' The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, 'See, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you.' The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well." So another evident scene that we see in all the miracles is that Jesus does something miraculous, and now he's going to get persecuted for it. Always happens. But we see here that it's this idea of the Sabbath law. Now, picking up a mat and walk, we look at it like, okay, that's not a big deal, right? That's probably a slap on the wrist, right? It was actually punishable by capital punishment. The man could have been stoned on the spot for that. Just for picking up, basically like a yoga mat, pretty much, or like a stretcher, like something like that, and just walking around, he could have been dragged out of the temple and stoned by the entire population in the area. That was what the man was now faced with. So he just had something miraculous happen to him, and now he's faced with death. You know, the man here was now faced with the teachers of the law accusing him, so of course he's going to say, "It wasn't me. I was told to do this by this guy. I don't know who it is, but I was told by him." Later, Jesus here sees him again in the temple. Now, Jesus knows what is going on. He knows that the man has just been confronted by the teachers of the law, but we see that Jesus doesn't run away. Jesus could have easily kept leaving, went to another town, did some more preaching and miracles in another town, and not this town where now there was the threat of death. Jesus walked straight to the man and just said, "Listen, stop sinning. Lead a life that is going to be worthy of the gift you have been given." You know, I think about in our lives, is there some things that we do sometimes that when faced with it, we crumble? That we crumble in the face of persecution or accusation? You know, there's too many times where we're sharing our faith, or we're trying to live by our convictions and biblical standards in our workplace or in life, but then our boss comes and says, "You can't do that here." Or you're at school and they say, "You can't talk about Jesus here. Why do you have a Bible?" Put that away. That is offensive to people here. And most of us put it away. We don't take it to school again. We don't take it to work. We don't mention Jesus at work. Why? Because the threat we could get fired. The threat that we could get expelled from school. Like, we are threatened with the idea of being persecuted, and we crumble. Now, I'm not to say go get fired. Don't tell your boss that Dom said to go get fired. But what I am saying is, do we stand up for our faith? Do we stand up for Jesus in these cases. You know, the Jewish leaders here were so concerned as well by their laws. They created laws around everything. Basically, you had like the laws of the Bible in the Old Testament right here, and around it, you had this hedge that they put around it, a metaphorical hedge. So basically, they would make stuff like, for instance, carrying that mat was now illegal to them, but not the Bible. For instance, another example, I know a lot of us are sick, right? Who's sick here? Raise your hand. Okay, yeah, there we go. Right, good enough. But some people are battling sickness with sore throats and stuff. And some of us, what we do is we gurgle to get our throats feel better with some saltwater stuff. But in those times, if you were to gargle during the Sabbath, you had to swallow it. I know, gross, right? If you spit it out, you are now breaking the law and in danger of being stoned. So guys, when you guys are gurgling, don't spit. Make sure you swallow it on Saturday, or you're in danger of breaking the Sabbath law. But this was how legalistic the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were becoming. And we're going to see this. I don't want to get into it now, but next week we're really going to see the interaction between Jesus and the teachers of the law. Because there's more to it than we look at it and just say, oh, Jesus is basically putting them in their place. But there's so much more to it than when you first understand. And we can see how sometimes we can become legalistic in these ways too. We have to be careful about not putting a hedge around God's law. There's a lot we can pull from this passage here, as we're finding out. But what I want us to go away with, we're going to end a little early here. But what hopes are we putting ourselves into? Are we putting false hopes into things that just aren't going to last? We're not going to work in general. What are we doing with our lives? Are we putting things into our jobs, our money, our relationships? Because God's going to take care of it all. Jesus is asking, do you want to get well? Do you really want to get well? Or are you still consumed with hanging on to that false hope that you're telling Jesus, oh, just help me get into the pool and I'll be well? Because I don't believe that God can save me from these instances. Next week, we're really going to look at the interaction between the teachers of the law and Jesus, and just the persecution that does break out against Jesus. And what we're going to notice is Jesus can spit fire against these guys. I'm not kidding. He can. He's going to put these guys in their place. So, amen. We're going to go ahead and pray. Now you guys can go get your food. Even though man does not live on bread alone. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you just that you are our God. I pray for that food in there, God. I pray it's amazing. Thank you for Jocelyn putting it together. Thank you so much for providing it, God. And I pray that we can really just look at our lives, where we're at, what hopes we're putting ourselves and relying on, God. What are we relying on that it just isn't you, God? Help us to find that in our lives, God. We love you, Lord, and it's in your Son's that we pray. Amen.
Amen.